video, I'm going to show you how you can convert a 2D image into a 3D displacement map using Blender. First, open a new scene in Blender. You can go ahead and delete all of the objects that exist in the scene by default. Just use the delete button on your keyboard to do that. Then, go into at the top here where you can see it says Add, and add a mesh plane. Make the plane larger by clicking S on your keyboard and moving your mouse away to scale up that piece of geometry. Now, in order to create a displacement map, we need to subdivide this because right now it is a single square with nothing going on inside of it. So to add subdivisions, I'm going to click Tab on my keyboard. That will go into edit mode. There's also, you can select between object mode and edit mode at the top. And then right click on the object. The first option I have here is subdivide. So I'm going to click on that. And then at the bottom, I have the option of sort of opening up my subdivision settings. I want to have a lot of cuts in here so that I can really see my image well. So I'm going to type in 100 and click enter. Now you can see our single square is divided into a bunch of smaller squares. Click Tab to exit edit mode. Now, on the right-hand side, click on the modifier properties button. It looks like a wrench. Select Add Modifier and look for Subdivision Surface from the drop-down menu. Leave that the way it is for now. The only difference you're going to notice is that your corners are slightly rounded. Next, add another modifier. This one is a displacement modifier. When I do that, I now need to select a texture to control my displacement. So I'm going to click where it says New within the displacement area. That will create a texture. Now, in order to control the texture, I need to switch into the Texture Properties menu. That is the one at the bottom that looks like some checkerboards. By default, it is set to Image or Movie, but if you don't have that option, you can grab that from the drop-down under Type, and then click Open. Navigate to the image you would like to use as your displacement map, and click Open. When you do that, you can see that your geometry suddenly has a lot of displacement. But let's make this work more for us instead of against us. So go back to the Modifier Properties menu, and we're going to turn our strength down to 0.05, and just see what that does. Now, I can actually see the image of Monet's water lily impression. If I need more detail, because as you can see this is rather pixely, I can simply adjust my subdivision modifier by clicking the arrow on the right to increase the subdivisions until I have the level of detail I'm looking for. So this looks pretty close to the full water lily piece, but depending on how large you scaled your plane initially, you might not be getting your entire piece of art. So to adjust that, click on the Tab button again to go into Edit mode. Now, we're going to repeat what we did at the beginning by clicking on S and simply scaling our object up until it is larger than it was before. I can click Tab at any point to see what happens, and now I notice that my image is actually sort of tiling or repeating around where the art ends. So that tells me I have it now too big. But one of the better ways to be able to see what we have going on here is to go back into Texture Properties, and under Mapping, instead of having it set to repeat, you can simply have it set to clip. When you do that, it will stop the texture after a single one. Now I know exactly how much I need to adjust my overall size of my plane. I can count the squares here and adjust accordingly. If I'd like to leave a little bit of an edge, I can. Now, if your piece is rectangular in any way, instead of square like my sample one, when you're in edit mode and you click S to scale only in a certain direction, you can click either Y to scale only along the Y-axis, or X to do the same in the X-axis. This will allow you to adjust your plane to better match the ratio of your art. When you're happy with how it's laid out and everything's ready to go, you now need to make it three-dimensional. What you're going to do is go back into the modifier properties menu, and you're going to apply both of these modifiers. What that means, though, is you'll no longer be able to edit or adjust your image, so make sure you're happy with how everything is looking and make any final adjustments if necessary. To apply them, click on the little downward arrow. This is next to where you see the word subdivision and then displace. It's important that you do them from the top down, as that's the order they're applying in. So, I'm going to apply my subdivision, and then apply my displacement. Next, I'm going to go back into edit mode by clicking the tab key on my keyboard, and move my screen so I can see more down the side of an object, and I'm going to click the E button on my keyboard. That will tell it to extrude, and when I do that, you can see this blue line appears. Simply pull your whole object down and get it out of the way. I've now turned my 2D graphic into a 3D impression, and I happen to have it in inverse on the bottom. So to remove the inverse from the bottom, when I'm in edit mode, I can now click on the S button to scale again, but this time I'm going to click Z, and I'm going to scale only in the Z axis and pull it all the way back to sort of that starting point, or in the resizing properties here, I can actually just click 0 next to Z axis. That will completely flatten out the bottom of my shape. So there you have it. That is how you can create a displacement map of a 2D image using Blender.